WatchGuard Capital. Invest your time wisely. Hi there, I'm Steven with WatchGuard Capital, a financial planning and investment company I started in 2016 after 3 people close to me were taken advantage of financially. Here are 3 lines of effort I am currently working on. Number 1, free financial resources for everyone like this book and these videos. Number 2, I'm on year 3 of a project to solve our federal government's national debt problem, and you can track my progress in these videos. And number 3, I make videos like this one that you're currently watching to hold financial bad actors accountable for their actions, and there's nothing worse than the lack of communication or progress updates as these cases play out in the courts, so I'm trying to fix that problem. And you can literally support all 3 of these causes by simply clicking that subscribe button, and if I get at least 1,000 subscribers, someday in the future, YouTube might actually pay me for this work, but for now it's a passion project that I feel is worth it, because fraud is absolutely rampant these days. This was the first video of this series called the J&J Slip and Fall Ponzi Scheme, where I explained how it worked. This was part 2, Complaint Filed and Lawyers Suspended, where I reviewed the SEC's complaint against the Ponzi scheme and the Nevada Bar Council's complaint against Matthew Beasley, Esquire. If you haven't seen those 2 videos, I'd recommend pausing this one and watching them in order, which you can do by clicking that playlist. Because this is part 3, the transcripts, where we'll take a deeper look at some of the transcripts from the secretly recorded meetings and phone conversations. And this is your last chance to pause this video and watch part 1 and 2, should you desire to do so. I didn't even know what the Pacer system was 2 months ago, and I missed some important files that were available, so I apologize to all viewers, SEC investigators, and court officials. Here's the first important file that I missed from April 12th, the declaration of Amir Salimi, who is basically the SEC's forensic accountant. And in his own words, based on my review of the account opening documents for Beasley IOLTA 5598 described in paragraph 8 above, I have determined that the account was established in the name of Beasley Law Group PC as a general IOLTA. In particular, Matthew Beasley was the sole signatory of the account from the time it was opened in January 26, 2017. As discussed further below, I observed a pattern of suspected Ponzi activity in the Beasley IOLTA 5598 that began as soon as deposits were received in this account around late January 2017, which included the receipt of cash in increments of $40,000, $50,000, $80,000, or $100,000, followed by immediate transfers to individuals believed to be involved with promoting the investments offered by J&J Consulting Services Incorporated, Alaska, J&J Consulting Services Incorporated, Nevada, and or J&J Purchasing, LLC. The pattern of Ponzi activity grew substantially over the years, as is detailed in the table below. The average of monthly deposits into the Beasley IOLTA 5598 grew from approximately $584,000 in 2017 to $20.4 million in 2021. This activity reached its peak in February 2022 when deposits of $30.1 million were made into the Beasley IOLTA 5598. And now in my words. So to put that in perspective, Judd believes he's making 12.5% on these contracts legitimately, which means he legitimately thinks he made $73,000 per month on average in 2017, $171,000 per month on average in 2018, $518,000 per month on average in 2019, $1,155,000 per month on average in 2020, $2,554,000 per month on average in 2021, and $3,550,000 per month on average in 2022. So no wonder he bought a private jet and a bunch of luxury cars. Here's another extremely important declaration that I missed from Joni Osler from the April 13th filings. And the material in this declaration is intense because it includes the transcripts from the video recordings from the Hindenburg Private-Jet Sting on February 17th, 2022 involving Jaeger and Johnsword. The transcripts from the phone conversation between Jeffrey Judd and WB on February 24th. And also the transcripts from the conversation between an FBI negotiator and Matthew Beasley during the 4-hour standoff on March 3rd, 2022, which was the day of the FBI raids. And you can find links to those transcripts in the description of this video. And here are 2 excerpts from the transcripts between the FBI negotiator and Matthew Beasley after Beasley states, "Please ask me questions about the Ponzi scheme."
Okay, Matthew, that's what we'll talk about, okay?
Yeah.
Alright, when did it start?
2017.
2017 or 15? I'm sorry.
17.
Okay, 2017. You described it as a Ponzi scheme started.
It wasn't, I wasn't taking, I lied, and I was getting a bridge loan because I have a gambling problem, or had. I was taking a bridge loan, but I just explained it as all this type of deal related to lawsuits.
Related to what, Matthew? I'm sorry.
Lawsuits.
Lawsuits?
Personal injury settlements. I told Judd that, hey, I got a client. I settled a personal injury case. They just need some money. I think it was Christmas or something, and they need some money for Christmas. And if you give it to them, that you get whatever, like, if you give them $25,000, they'll give you $35,000 back. Something like that. And here's an excerpt from the recorded call between Judd and WB, an individual posing as a potential investor. Judd states, "And then from there I took a job with Big Pharma out of college as a rep, and then just did different jobs from there. I did, after that, they changed the pay scale and all that. So then I went into mortgages during the boom in the early 2000s. I did that for a while, then I owned some specialty pharmacies with 2 other guys, compounding stuff. So we did that, and that's actually how I came across this, what I'm doing now, is that we had to sue one of our CFO because he was stealing a bunch of money from us. And so we sued him, and then I started talking to my attorney, who's Matt Beasley, who I do this with. And that's how we started this business. It was just from that lawsuit. So, wow." And here's what all that means. A guy who is a CFO of a compounding pharmacy steals a bunch of money from Jeffrey Judd, which leads to him suing him. That lawsuit introduces Judd to an attorney with a gambling problem who fabricates a bridge loan story over a $25,000 gambling debt that allegedly causes Judd to unknowingly construct a $450 million Ponzi scheme, which destroys retirement plans, home purchases, businesses, families, and more, which is a sad chain of events and a crazy one. Let's shift gears and take a look at the J&J Slip and Fall Ponzi Scheme org chart, and this is where we left off in part 2. I've been pronouncing his name Shane Yeager, turns out it's pronounced Shane Jaeger. Per this document, Jason Johnsword is not being represented by Thomas Erickson. Another lawyer that looks to be out of the picture is Nick Oberheiden in his law office, and Kevin Anderson Esquire of Fabian Vancott looks to be representing Jeffrey Judd or J&J Consulting. I'm not really sure at this point because there are so many lawyers involved in some capacity for Jeffrey Judd, his trust, and his companies, so that might have to be updated in the future. Robert Draskovich of the Draskovich Law Group is representing Matthew Beasley, but not in regards to the Ponzi scheme. He's representing him in regards to the assault on a federal officer complaint. Garrett T. Ogata Esquire of the law offices of Garrett T. Ogata is representing Beasley regarding the Ponzi scheme. T. Luis Palazzo of Palazzo Law Firm is representing Shane Jaeger. Dyke Hewish of the Hewish Law Firm is representing Roland Tanner, and Roland Tanner was Shane Jaeger's neighbor, which is probably how Tanner got involved in the J&J Slip and Fall Ponzi scheme. Lance Meningo of Meningo Law is representing Denny Sieber. And now for an addition to the org chart. Seth Johnson was a sub-solicitor based on the purchase agreements he signed on behalf of Prestige Consulting LLC, a company he started with his brother-in-law and co-Prestige manager, Chris Rohner. Rohner is cousins with Shane Jaeger, which is probably how this arm is connected. And if you watched part 1 where I explained how the slip and fall settlement contract supposedly worked, you should know that the Prestige contracts worked a little differently, and this is how. If you bought a Prestige Consulting contract, the J&J Consulting purchase agreements discussed in part 1 are still the underlying investment, but the Prestige arm used a subcontract that looked like this one, and you probably got paid 8% over 120 days, not 12.5% over 90 days. You probably never saw Jeffrey Judd, Matthew Beasley, or the slip and fall plaintiffs' names, which were replaced with a 5-digit number, and this is how the back end of those contracts worked. An investor would deposit $100,000 with Prestige Consulting, the amount required to purchase a standard J&J Slip and Fall purchase agreement contract, or maybe 5 investors would deposit $20,000 each. But once the required amount was met to buy a contract, the funds were transferred to Shane Jaeger. I think. Maybe they were sent directly to the Beasley Law Group IOLTA, but regardless, the pooled money would then be transferred and used to purchase a short-term loan agreement between a supposed slip and fall victim, as explained in part 1, that would return 12.5% in 90 days to the buyer of the underlying purchase agreement. And this part worked the same as it did before. Once the slip and fall victim settlement paid out, their lawyer would take their 30 to 40% cut. The original $100,000 investment would be returned to Beasley's IOLTA to quote-unquote protect the investor, along with a 25% interest payment. Half, or $12,500, is Judd's compensation for structuring the deal. A $5,000 administration fee would be split between Beasley and the firm representing the slip and fall victim, and any residual settlement money would be released to the plaintiff. And at this point, the investors could extract their principal and or interest as before, but for simplicity, let's assume that the principal is left in the scheme to be reinvested, and for now, just track the interest part. Shane Jaeger of Sterling Consulting is the entity that actually purchased the contract, so the interest would flow to him. He would keep a 2.5% commission for facilitating the transaction. It would send the other 10% to Prestige Consulting. which would keep a 2% commission for introducing the transaction and then distribute the remaining 8% to the underlying investors who actually turned out to be victims. And that's my basic understanding of how the prestige consulting arm of the J&J Slip and Fall Ponzi scheme worked, which may need to be updated in the future. So to the best of my ability, this is what the J&J Slip and Fall Ponzi scheme org chart looks like, and if you have any additional pieces to this puzzle, please contact me at info@watchguardcapital.com. Don't forget to subscribe or share this video to support this cause and invest your time wisely.